So good morning, everyone. So today I want to cover what is API testing, and first let us discuss what are APIs, and then we will discuss what is API testing, and how to test APIs with JMeter. How to do API testing with JMeter, that is covered in the next slide, right? So first let's understand what are APIs first, right? So API stands for Application Programming Interface, right? So this is the short form of API is the acronym for Application Programming Interfaces, right? So basically, when development team is developing any application, right? So this UI will be developed by one separate team. There will be a front-end development team separately, and there will be a separate team for business layer, and there will be a different team for database layer. So this is how application development is happening now, right? From many years, right? So basically, what happens is so UI team will be working on the presentation layer or developing the user interface, and backend team are the core team, they will be spending time on this business layer. So you can do GUI testing only after this this presentation layer is developed, if you want to do GUI testing. Yes or no?
Yes.
So all the business logic and all will be developed over here, right, in the business layer. So but if you want to do any performance testing or functional testing for any application, so you have to wait. If you want to do GUI testing, you have to wait till the presentation layer is developed, right? And presentation layer will be subjected to changes very frequently. It will be subjected to changes very frequently, and so that's why, so instead of waiting for GUI testing, instead of waiting for the GUI development, 1 second guys. Okay. So let's take some we are knowingly or unknowingly we are using APIs a lot. Okay, we are knowingly or unknowingly we are using APIs a lot. Okay, so where are we using APIs? Suppose if you are checking weather on your mobile phone, right? So actually, you are sending a API request to some weather application, and that that request will fetch the response from that weather application, right? So, or if you are posting some some post on Facebook, or if you are posting some message on Twitter, right? So these all are working nowadays on the base of API. Okay, and why this APIs are required? So let us understand that. Right, 1 second. So let me give one example here. So everyone uses Redbus, right? Everyone uses Redbus, right? Or no? Redbus, or what else? What do we have?
Zomato.
Zomato, yes, right. So if you take this example, right, when you are searching for some buses, so let's say for example, you are searching for some buses from Hyderabad to some Bangalore, right? So when you search buses, right, so what happens? Actually, what happens is, it will fetch, so basically from the front end perspective, from a user perspective, user will get all the travel operators, availability, seat availability from all the travel operators, right? See, we have different travel operators like, Intercity Travels, Sri Krishna Travels, and so on. We are getting some a lot of search results, Go to Travels and all this and so on. Does it mean that, so basically they will be having this Krishna Travels, and, all the private travels are, or we will get for, APSRTC and TSRTC also, isn't it? Guys,
Yes.
we'll get
Yes.
both private operators as well as government operators details, right? So does it mean that Redbus has access? So First, let us understand, where these details will be stored. All this ticket availability and all will be stored in, for example, TSRTC will have their own database, their own servers, and all the details will be stored in their, database, TSRTC application database, isn't it? So in the same way,
Yes.
Sri Krishna Travels or any other travels, private travels will have their own database servers, right? And all the ticket availability will be stored and maintained by their application only. Now the question is, how is Redbus, able to get those details? Does it mean that Redbus has access to all the private travels databases?
No, sir.
No.
Definitely, it will not have access to, they will see. Basically, private travel operators, they cannot give access to each and everyone, right? So there are like, so Redbus is a travel aggregator. It's a platform, aggregator platform, right? So in the same way, we have Avibus or we have, Make My Trip or, many other travel aggregators, right? So it doesn't mean that, this Redbus or, these travel aggregators will not have access to their individual databases, the private travels or government travels databases, right? They will not have access. They cannot provide, right? So then how does it fix the data is, all these private operators, they will be exposing their APIs, right? And when you search for a bus between some, from one city to another city, basically Redbus will send a request to the API of all the travel operators, and it will get all the details. So API here is, an intermediary software between, two different applications. Is it clear now? What are those different applications? Redbus is one application, and the travel operator's application is the second one, right? Now,
Yes.
instead of exposing all the details, instead of, giving access to the other data, so instead of giving, obviously they cannot give each individual operator, they cannot give access to their database and their servers. So how they will make the data available is through APIs. Is it clear now? So we are using, unknowingly, we are using a lot of APIs in our day-to-day life. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So, there are two concepts here. Actually, we have something called web services and web APIs, right? So, again, if I want to explain this, it will take 1 or 2 days time. That's why I don't want to go into that, right? Right? So, we want to see how to do API testing with JMeter or Loader tool. That is important. Anyways, like, let me give some brief introduction, or, give you a brief idea about, web services and APIs. What is the difference between web services and web APIs? So initially, this used to happen like, first of all, let me explain what is a web service. What is meant by a web service, right? Say, for example, if you see this, this picture, right? So there is an application that is developed in Java. There is an application that is developed in .NET and PHP, right? And let's assume that, so with this Java application, there is some other .NET application that it wants to communicate with this Java application, right? Or else, a Java application want to communicate with PHP application, or a .NET application want to communicate with PHP application. So, right, so for this communication between two different applications, right? So web service is the software that is developed, for communication between two different applications, right? Web service is a language independent way of communication. You see here, right? Web service is a language independent way of communication. Or else, as you can see in the figure, Java, .NET and PHP applications can communicate with other applications through a web service over the network, right? So what is web service here? It is a software for interoperable machine to machine communication. Interoperable means it is a software used for communication between two different applications. Those two applications need not be, developed in the same language. That's the thing you have to understand. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If two applications which are developed in two different languages want to communicate, right? So that is where your web services come into picture. That can be done by using a web service, right? So initial days, like, many years back, like, web services were very popular and very prominent. However, these web services are now replaced by APIs, web APIs. Okay. Is it clear, guys? So
Yes.
initially, previously, it was web services that that facilitate communication between two different applications. Nowadays, web services are out of or I say outdated, and APIs are very popular now nowadays, right? So, but I just want to give like what is the difference between a web service and web API. Both work in the same way. That's why I want to explain what is this web service also, right? So now let us see the definitions. This theoretical definitions. Web service by so see here. Why not write a code that could be used by any developer coding in any language, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? And yes, and guess what? The solution is web services. The solution is a web service, right? If you write any code, that can be used by any developer coding in any other language, right? That's what we discussed here, right? That's what we discussed here. Suppose, some code is written in Java, and, that should be used by some other application, some other, application developed in PHP or .NET. And yes, that is possible with the help of a web service, right? So basically what you need to understand is if two different applications developed in different languages should communicate with each other, there will be, this, that is where your web service comes into picture. So web services developed in one language can be used by any other language, right? And the best part is it helps to bring the connectivity from one application to another. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Right? So here, like, see here, so your red bus may be developed in Java, or your case, suppose this application intercity travels, let's assume that this is developed in .NET, right? Or there is some other application that is developed in PHP. Now all these can communicate because because of this APIs here. Web services are, see, both are one, and like the functionality is same. The way web services and web APIs work, both are same. So that is possible, communication between two different applications is possible through this web service. Clear? Web service or web API. Clear, guys? Any queries? Very important to understand, guys. Very important for interviews also. What is a web service and what is a web API, right? And this comes into picture. This is pronounced as WSDL, Web Service Description Language, right? Or Web Service Definition Language. This comes into picture for like web services. Okay. So web service, this is pronounced as WSDL, WSDL. That is pronounced as WSDL. So what is WSDL? There are certain rules that define how communication can happen between different systems. Different systems means different applications, right? Just now we are discussed. Different systems means different applications, right? So to enable the communication between two different applications, right? There will be certain rules to follow, and that rules are defined in this WSDL language, in a language called Web Service Description Language or Web Service Definition Language, right? Those who are interested for theory part. But if you understand, that red bus example, right, that is more than enough, right? To explain what is the, what are APIs, and where are we using APIs in day-to-day life and all, right? Now web services are majorly of two types, right? First one is SOAP and the other one is REST. REST is very popular nowadays because SOAP uses XML based message exchange. So SOAP uses XML language, simple object access protocol, that uses XML language, right? So you can see here, SOAP defines a standard communication protocol specification for XML based message exchange, whereas REST uses it can work both on XML and JSON. Okay, so here is that. So REST supports all formats: XML, JSON, text, or HTML, right? What does REST stand for? Representational state transfer, right? And like of course the definition is not that much important. But what you need to understand is why REST APIs are so popular is they support all formats. Okay, that's the reason, like REST is so popular. REST became so popular, and nowadays, like, everyone is using developing REST APIs. Clear, guys? Whereas, if you take SOAP, see, previously, web services used to work on mostly on this technology. So, web services are so popular, and they used to use this protocol, right? SOAP is a protocol, right? So protocol, what is protocol? Communication language or communication protocol, right? So however, SOAP uses only SOAP works on based on XML based message exchange, and it is a old technology. SOAP is old technology and has become obsolete after REST came into picture, right? Obsolete means that became outdated. No, nowadays no one is developing, no one is developing these web services using SOAP, but everyone is developing the web services using this REST APIs. Clear, guys? Guys, able to follow or no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And why this REST is popular is it supports all
Supports all.
formats, and JSON is a lightweight format. That is the reason it has become more successful. Why, why JSON is, I mean, the lightweightness of JSON is made it successful, REST successful. Why? Because nowadays, we use more. See, nowadays, previously only web applications used to be there. Yes or no? Previously, most of the applications are web applications only. However, nowadays we have apps, something called apps, right? I hope everyone knows what is the difference between a web application and an app. Do you know, do you know difference between a web application and an app? See, web application means, an application that can be accessed only over, see,
Browser.
yeah, from a browser. That is called as a web application, right? And what is app? App means like which can be used from mobile, right? Mobile apps versus web apps. So you can go through this link if you want to explore more on this. And now why these apps are, became so popular, because, mobiles have very less bandwidth, right? Not all mobiles will have more bandwidth, right? So mobiles have very less bandwidth. And, XML being lightweight format, right? They work well with, apps, right? They work with both web applications as well as apps. This, JSON, because, or this REST API is so popular because REST API uses JSON, right? Mostly JSON, and as it is lightweight for format, right? JSON is lightweight format, right? That is most suitable for applications having less bandwidth also. Is it clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Sure. I will repeat, guys. If you don't understand, I will repeat. Okay. So but like you have to understand what is the difference between a web application and a app, and why, what is the difference between a web service and a web API, and what is the difference between SOAP and REST API, right? SOAP protocol and REST protocol, and what is the difference between XML and JSON. You already know what is the difference between XML and JSON. I already explained it long back. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
XML versus JSON, right? Everyone remember this, right? Everyone remember this? Why it went off? XML versus JSON, right? So let me repeat, in this context. Okay. So suppose, this is the data of 3 employees, right? Suppose, assume that there is some data of 3 employees that should be traveled over a network, right? And if the underlying protocol uses XML, right? If the communication protocol uses XML, this is how it will be. The data will be transferring. I mean, or the data will be stored in both XML and JSON are used to store and transport data. You remember that definition? Both XML and JSON are used to, see, if you see here, XML was designed to store and transport data. In the same way, JSON is also used, for storing and transporting data. However, JSON is lightweight format for storing and transport data. That's why JSON is used, extensively nowadays. Mostly everyone using JSON now, right? So XML, when it was popular is around 2000 to 2005, it was popular. Okay, when I was, looking for career, like at that time, like XML is very popular, and we learned XML, the complete XML language, right? So big, at that time there is no JSON. So after 2005 to 10, in that period, maybe this JSON came into picture, and JSON is a lightweight format for storing and transport data. That's why, and this lightweight format is most suitable for applications which are, devices which are having less bandwidth also, like mobiles or tabs, all these devices also can use this JSON content. That's why JSON became more popular. Now coming to this example, if this is the example of data of 3 employees, first name and last name, right? That is what we have information here, right? An employee first name and last name. Suppose this 3 employees first name and last name should be transported or stored in XML format. This is how it looks like. Whereas if you are using JSON, right? So this is how it looks like. JSON will contain this curly brace and square bracket, right? Whereas these are called as tags, TAGs tags. This is starting tag and this is closing tag, ending tag. Again, this is starting tag for employee. This is closing tag for employee, right? So apart from the syntax, right? So this is how when if the application uses JSON for storing and transporting data, it looks like this, right? Now you see, like this has how many lines does it have? You can clearly see here the difference, right? So each employee has 3 lines, so 3 into 3 9 lines plus one opening the employee tag, the other the closing employee tag. So it is around 11 lines. So whereas here it is around 5 lines, right? Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right? So that's why JSON is lightweight format, right? Now that's why JSON is popular, and that's why APIs have become popular, because APIs, REST APIs use JSON, can support JSON. That's why this this REST APIs have become so popular. And they made, once REST came into picture, the SOAP protocol has become absolute. No one is using SOAP protocol, and it has become outdated. Clear? It has become like Nokia in the phone market, right? Once we got smartphones, isn't it? Now, so what is an API? I will share this, this PPT also with everyone. So I explained what is an API here. API is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk each other, right? Every time you use an app like Facebook, send an instant message, check weather on your phone, you are actually using an API, right? Each time you are using any mobile app like Facebook, or checking weather on your phone, you are actually using an API. So API is a particular set of rules and specifications that software programs can follow to communicate with each other, right? So actually, this is like these are developers concepts, but still like you should be having an understanding of what is API, because you may be testing the API. Some companies focus more on API testing than GUI testing. Okay.
Sir, one small doubt. See, when web services are same, web services and web APIs are same, why web API came into picture?
Sorry, yes, web services and web APIs are same. Yes, both are used for communication between two different languages.
When we are already having web services, what is the more information that we get from web API?
No, we don't get more information. Web APIs are lightweight because they support JSON format. They are lightweight.
Okay, so
See,
web services. Okay.
Web services require a lot of bandwidth.
Okay. And do they support only XML, or do they also support
Web
same all?
services XML support only XML.
Okay.
Whereas these support XML, JSON, text, or HTML. Right? That's what I have shown here. Right? So REST supports all formats, XML, JSON, but JSON is only used mostly. Okay, so here I gave difference between a web service and web API, right? Both are, see, this returns response as XML, whereas APIs use mostly JSON. They support XML, but they, they mostly use JSON format only, right? And here you can see it is a lightweighted architecture and good for devices which have limited bandwidth like mobile devices. And one more thing is web services, they are not open source, right? Whereas this is open source. APIs are open source, right? And example as an API, I just now gave at the beginning of the session, I gave this example. Whenever you are checking whether on, whether on, on your mobile app, you are actually using an API. Without API, what you have to do, you have to go to weather.com site and see the details, right? And read the details as human does. With API, weather application will send a message to weather application. Weather application means, the application on your app mobile. It will send a message to weather.com and receives the result and displays it. Okay. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So next, now you understood, right? So real life example I gave here, different individual sites for bus booking like APSRTC, TSRTC, KSRTC, Orange Travels, right? These will have their own databases, right? And they cannot expose their data to our servers to the external world. That's why what they do is they develop some APIs and they expose those APIs. So what happens here? What if you are not using the direct travels website, but a channel that has direct access to the information? And what if you are using an online travel service such as Redbus or MakeMyTrip or Abibus, which aggregates information from a number of bus operated databases? And the travel service in this case means this Redbus or MakeMyTrip or Abibus, they will interact with the individual travel websites APIs. They will interact means they will send a request to the individual travel websites APIs, and they will get that information about the ticket availability, what is the ticket cost and all. Clear?
Yes.
So let me repeat it for the sake of recording. So we'll let's take one more example for this API in our day-to-day life. Suppose you went to a restaurant, right? So you want to place an order for something, right? You want to place an order for Mahindra. What do you want, Mahindra, this Sunday? Mahindra, are you there?
Yes, Anna.
Oh, Sunday special.
Mutton.
Okay, so you want to order something for mutton, right? So and you specify something, right? I want more spicy, or I want this and that flavor and all, right? So so whom do you order basically if you go to a restaurant? So there will be a waiter taking your orders, isn't it? And that waiter, so you will explain in some language that you and waiter can understand, right? Say for example, you will order in Telugu, in your local language or English, right? But the person who is cooking in the kitchen, right, the chef may not be knowing English or your local language. So he may be some other state from like Orissa or something, right? So assume that he don't know he don't know English, right? Or he don't know Telugu. Then whatever waiter will do, waiter will explain him in his local language or Hindi language, right? They will they will take the waiters, they will recruit based on that, like who can communicate with the chefs and all. Chefs and both the customers, isn't it? So your waiter is your waiter in the restaurant is actually acting as an API between you and the chef. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So it is making communication make communication easy between two different persons from two who knows different languages. Clear? The same way API works, like it facilitates communication between two different applications. Clear, guys? I gave that example also here. API also provides a layer of security. So, like ordering a takeaway from a restaurant. You tell the restaurant what you would like to eat. They tell you what they need in return, then in the end you get your meal, right? So I explained the same example. I took the same example here also in one of the slides. Let me search for that. Hold on, just give me a minute. Okay, I think this is the only point that I mentioned here, right? So if you search in web, you will have a lot of content, lot of examples on this APIs. Okay, I took, I made it, clear and crisp, right? So I can't put pages and pages together in PPTs, right? That's why I took this red bus example and that waiter example. Clear, guys? Can you understand? Can you? Is it clear, guys?
Sir.
This is the best example of APIs. I can say this red bus or VBus. These are the best examples. I can say, right?
API is developed by developer.
What is that?
API request developed by developer.
Yes, developers only will develop that. Right now, so what is API testing now? So API testing is a software testing that validates the APIs. That validates means that test the APIs, how they are working, right? Purpose of API testing is to check the functionality, reliability, performance, and security of APIs, right? Very important point to understand this. So purpose of API testing is what we check here. We check the functionality, whether they are working as per their purpose or not, and their reliability, how reliable they are, how their performance is, right? When multiple users are accessing the application, how good or how bad the performance is, and the security of APIs, right? How secure they are. And API testing should focus on data accuracy, right? Means data accuracy means how accurate the response is, right? Data accuracy and HTTP status codes. We know different HTTP status codes. There are 5 different classes of secure status codes, right? What are they, guys?
Yes. 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s.
Yeah, 1xs, 2xs, 3xs, 4xs, and 4xs and 5xs. So we already I already explained this as HTTP response codes, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
The basic sessions we discussed this, right? So these are the different response codes, right? So we test the response code as well when we are testing the APIs, right? What status code is returned by the API, and how is the response time, and error codes if API returns any error, and authorization checks, right? Now what is authorization. There are 2 terms here in any application requires, right? So one is authentication and
Authorization.
authorization. Yes. So what is the difference between authentication and authorization?
Authorization is to check the access.
Right.
Enter the credentials and for the login, that is the authorization.
No.
Authentication is
See.
whether the credentials what we are giving is it validates. Authorization is a specific user has access to the credentials or resource.
Right. Not access to the credentials, but whether the user has permission to perform some operation.
Yeah.
Right. So that is authorization, right? So I already covered this case in performance in basics only. The difference between I covered this authentication and authorization. Very important interview question, guys. Very important interview question. Okay, and also very important to understand. Authentication is the act of validating that user credentials, right? If the credentials are correct or not, valid credentials or not, that is called authentication. This is the first step in any security process. In any security process for applications, right? In any I will elaborate this in any application security process, right? So authorization, what is authorization? Authorization as system security is the process of giving user permission to access a specific resource or the function. Say for example, admin user will have all rights on the application, on any application. Yes or no? Right? Yes. Whereas normal user may not be having normal user definitely will not be having all the permissions, all the privileges, right? So checking the, like permissions of the user, that is called as authorization, right? So here you can see some, diagram here. Authentication means proves that you are you, means that is credentials. That is done at the login part. Say for example, authentication will be done at login part. Whereas authorization is, suppose if you are doing some read operation, write operation, delete operation, right? So this is where authorization comes into picture, right? So first application will have to check whether you have those permissions or not, right? Read operation, read permissions, everyone may be you having, but write operation and delete operation, like every user will not be having those permission, right? Only, so whenever some user is trying to write or delete some data, right? So first application will check whether that user is authorized to do or not, right?
Yes, sir.
And if the user, once it verifies that that user has that permission, right, then only like it will allow that operation, that read or sorry, that write or delete operation to happen, right? That is authorization. Very important, guys, very important for interviews. So what is the difference between authentication and authorization? So like this will be, some people, if they are, if they are, in one of the interviews, right, in one of the interviews faced by my previous students, right? This was one of the first, five questions, first 5 questions. Okay. So very important interview question. What is our very important concept, like in, in software, what is authentication and what is authorization? So basically API testing will focus on these, on the, what are those? Data accuracy, response, status codes, response time, error codes, and authorization checks, right? Now, this diagram will, you should understand, like, or you should remember well, like what is API testing, what is the difference between GUI testing and API testing. So if you, remember this diagram and understand this diagram. So when you are doing GUI testing means what we have done so far, right? So what we have done so far, we are recording the application, and we are launching the application, and we are manually navigating through the application, and we are doing testing on that. That is GUI testing. So, and we are doing it on the presentation layer. Yes or no? We are doing on the user interface, right? That is GUI testing. Whereas API testing will be done on the business layer, right? We, in the next, just in next few minutes, we will see how to do API testing. But now understand that API testing will be directly, we are testing directly on the business layer, right? Business layer means the backend code that developer has written, right? This is front end code, this is back end code, and this is database, right? Now let's see how to do API, right? You can remember this diagram, right? You should be able to draw this diagram and explain. If someone asks in the interview, right, what is the difference between GUI testing and API testing? So you should be able to draw this diagram and explain him. Okay. Shall we move ahead? Or, any queries? I'll take a pass here. Any queries we'll discuss, and then we'll move to the next slide.
You can move.
Right. So we learned today what is web service, what is web API, what is the difference between both of them, and what is the difference between XML and JSON, right? Why JSON is so popular, and and what is API testing, right? Now let us see how to do API testing, right? So with JMeter, this is how we do API testing. So JMeter API testing with HTTP request sampler. Say for example, there is a weather application like this, api.openweathermap.org, right? And you want to test that API. You want to test that API. So let me first show you. So you should be able to access this URL from the browser. Okay. I'm just trying that, request from the browser, and you are getting some response. See here. So what does it do? See here, whether, I mean, this, we are sending a request to the weather API with some weather application, and Q is equal to London, comma UK, and app ID is equal to, there is some number. Okay. So what does this API return? It should return the weather condition in London now, right? That's what, this API is for. So, and what is, see the response what we got? So this is the response that we got. Long, see, LON, what is this quad? Quad means, what can this be? Quad means
Coordinates.
coordinates, right? And LON, what can it be?
And then longitude.
Longitude.
Longitude and latitude. See here, longitude and
Yes,
LAT
sir.
stands for latitude. Weather, right? And you see here, right? Main is clouds. Description is overcast clouds, right? And we got some response on the weather condition, right? See, the temperature is this much, feels like this much, right? Temperature minimum today is this much, temperature maximum is this much, right? The pressure is this much, and humidity levels are 93, right? You got the response from that API, right? You send a request and you got a response, right? Country is equal to GB, means Great Britain, right? And this is sunrise, this is sunset, this is timestamp, guys. This is nothing but timestamp 1630819186. So if you want to confirm, copy that, and I have already shown you some websites like which show you which convert from Unix epoch time to human readable time and all. What is that?
Epoch time.
Right, epoch time converter, right? Epoch time converter. Right? So you can go to this epochconverter.com and you can paste that value over here, that epoch time here, and click on this timestamp to human date. So see here, it is showing the current today's time, right? Your time zone. You got it right? 10 for right?
Yes.
Why is it showing 18 minutes ago? Hold on. I
Yes.
used it just now, right? Okay, maybe the latest, it has returned the latest reading, right? So maybe it has updated some 18 minutes ago, like or 15 minutes ago. It has returned the latest one, right? So and time zone and ID, name is London, and so on, right? So this is one example of an API which returns the weather conditions, and we are passing these as query parameters. We are passing the location as query parameter, and it based on that it is returning the weather condition in that city, right? Now suppose you want to test this API, right? You are supposed to test this API, right? So let us understand, let us break up this API into its corresponding components, right? So first of all, see, this is protocol is HTTP, right? I gave color coding here, guys. This is your server name, right? api.openweathermap.org. This is your server name, and then this is your resource path. This is called as resource path, and this is called as query string. Q is whatever is followed after question mark, that is called as query string. And if the and this is called as key, this is called as value. Key value pairs, right? This is called as key and this is value. Ampersand is a separator. Again, another key, another value. You got it right? These are query string parameters, right? So see, whatever followed by question mark, this is called as a query string. In the query string, we have two parameters. One is this one, Q is equal to, location. The other one is some app ID, right? So these are called as query string parameters. I gave color coding for your understanding. Okay. So right, you understood, right? Well, the color coding and all.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right, and this is your actual server name. This is the actual server name, right? So that on which this weather API, weather application is running, right? Now suppose you want to test this API. So how do you do that with JMeter? Once you launch, let me launch a new JMeter instance. Any background noise from my side that you are listening?
No, sir.
Okay, right. So how do you test with JMeter? You open, you add a thread group first to the test plan, add a thread group, right? And to that thread group, add a HTTP request sampler, go to sampler and select HTTP request sampler. And you provide the protocol and server name and, all the details over here, right? So you will get this APIs, from the DevOps team. DevOps, they will provide the API documentation, or functional testing team also can provide the details. What details? What is the API call, API request, or endpoint URL. This is also called as endpoint URL. Okay, you can note it down. This is also called as endpoint URL. So you'll get this endpoint URL or this API request from the DevOps team or functional testing team. They can provide you those details, right? Now what you do is you will break that endpoint URL into protocol, server name, and and all this, right? So let me quickly show you how to do that, right? Okay, so let me take this the same example. Protocol is HTTP, so I type here HTTP, and server name or IP address. This is your server name. And this is your server name. Okay. Right, now copy that server name over here, right? api.weathermap.org. We don't have any port number, so 80 is the port number for HTTP, default port for HTTP, so that is 80. And get request. Okay, this is basically a get request, right? And like what is the path here? This is your path. Okay, this is your path. I think we have copied from here. This is your path. Resource path. Path means resource path. You know what is resource path, right, everyone? Let's go back to our example that you know very well. Let's go. If you go to this this web tools example, right? Let me check if it is running. Let me close this. Yeah, web tools is running. You can see here. Now let me go. Let me take this example to explain you what is resource path. Okay. So when you are testing on when you are working on API testing, you need to be clear on the endpoint URL and what is that, right? Say for example, let me browse through. Let me localhost. Okay, yeah, right. So see, this is your server name. Here in this example, this is your server name, and this is the port number, and this is your resource path. Now let us understand what is meant by resource path. Resource path means what is resource here? Index.html is the resource, right? Index.html is a HTML page resource, HTML page resource. HTML and HTML both are same. Okay, don't get confused over there, right? This index page, right? This index page is there in a folder called web tools. Okay, let me show you that. Okay, so if you go to this, open file, if you use open file location and go to this web tools folder, right? Here you have some folder called htdocs, right? All your HTML documents are there in this. So here you have something called web tools folder. In that you have this index.html. So essentially what you are doing is you are asking for a page called index.html which is there in web tools folder. So that's why you understood now what is resource path. Resource is index.html is the resource, and what is the path? Where is it available? That is available in a folder called web tools. So that's why like it is getting this page. Suppose if you want to see home.html, right? You just give, instead of index.html, if you give home.html, you will see HTML, you will see only this page. This is home.html, right? So in the same way, suppose if you want to see only some image, right? What you do is you give images and image name. Let me quickly do that, right? Images, in web tools folder, there is a folder, again a folder called subfolder called images. In that you have hp logo.png. Suppose you want to see only this, hp logo.png, right? So you can do that directly. You can send a get request to, see, in web tools there is a subfolder called images. In that you have an image called hp logo.png, right? Now you got only that logo, right?
Yes, sir.
You understood what is meant by resource path. Where is that resource available, right? HTML is an image, is there a resource, or like an image, all the PNG, JPGs, these are all images of resources of a web page, right? So you understood now what is resource path, guys, everyone?
Yes.
right now. So this is the resource path. So maybe on the server there is a folder called data. In that, there is some, I cannot show this because we don't have access to the servers, weather map servers, right? That's why I have shown that web tools example. So maybe there is a folder called web data, and in that data you have something called another subfolder called 2.5. In that you have some page called weather. Now we are passing this these values are city and app ID as a query string parameter, right? You understood what is query string? Query string means whatever followed by question mark. This is called as query string. Basically, this is called as query string. Got it? Guys, is it clear? Now coming
Yes, sir.
back to this, how to send, how to develop a JMeter script for this, right? So what you do is, I gave the resource path and I have to pass the query string, right? Now what I can do is, so this is my query string, Q is equal to London, UK, right? And let me parameters. Right? Now I have added here name. See, these are called as name value pair space, right? What is name? Q is the name. Value is London, UK, right? And next, copy the other one. App ID is equal to, right? So, and you use this add from clipboard option, right? Let me save this. Weather API demo, right? Weather API underscore demo. I'm saving it. Let me, maximize this. Let me zoom in. The font is very small. So you can do that with the, Postman tool also. You can do the same thing with Postman tool also, right? Right. This is how we build our, this is how we build our, script for this API testing, right? Now like what else? So I added a sampler called HTTP request. I added first a thread group to the test plan. Then I added a sampler called HTTP request sampler, and I entered API details onto the HTTP request like protocol server and request type. Right? By default, request type will be get, and this is a get request only. That's why I kept as it is. What next? I entered this. I used this example. And now add a listener and view result. Add a listener called view results tree and add an assertion to check the results, right? So let me add a listener called view results tree. Right? And you can use some, assertion. So let's do that. First let me replay the script and let's see what response you are getting. Right? Now see here the HTTP request is successful, right? And this is the request that went to the server. API open HTTP colon API open weather map data 2.5 weather comma question mark weather question mark Q is equal to London UK ampersand. So is it the same? That is how our endpoint URL is, right? So you have to check whether how the request is going on. Is the request is same as the endpoint URL, right? And now let's see the response data. Go to the response data, and this is the response that we got in the browser also, right? When we use this URL in the browser, this is how we got the response, right? Yes or no? This one. Coordinate,
Yes,
latitude,
yes.
weather, and all this, right? And like this, right? So now this is the expected response, right? So you can test with the same thing with Postman tool also. However, like Postman tool, you can test with only one user, right? If you want to do performance testing, you need some tool like LoadRunner or JMeter for APS. Let me show you how to do in Postman. Let's see how to do in Postman tool. Right? Open your Postman tool, and
So
very
for
simple. Yes.
this also to check the performance of that API, so we have to add listeners, view results tree, graphs, and see.
If you want to do performance testing, what you will simply do, you have to suppose you want to test this API with some 100 users or 1000 users. You give number of threads as 1000, and you use some ramp up time, and you can run a test, isn't it?
Okay.
So to do load testing or performance testing, we need some tool like JMeter or LoadRunner. Otherwise, if you want to test with a single user, like you can use this Postman tool. You got it?
Yeah.
This is enough. Postman tool
Kishore,
is enough.
what is the purpose? If we are checking in the browser, we are able to see the response, right? Again, why we need to test this JMeter and see?
Okay. So if you want to, suppose there are some 100 APIs, you need to keep on testing, sending the request from the browser and capture the response, right? But using some tool, you can automate that, right? You can put all your APIs into this JMeter tool and you can add some assertions and you can automate the whole process. That is the purpose of these tools, right? Whether it is Postman tool or JMeter, like that is the purpose, to automate that.
Okay.
You just need to click on the play button. You add the different APIs like this. Suppose this is weather API, right? Suppose you have some other APIs. So you can add all those, add a HTTP request. Sorry. Add all the APIs under this, and you can automate that, right?
Yeah.
So let's do that with Postman. Like I think Nagendra, you use Postman, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can I give control? Can you show us like how to do testing with API testing with Postman?
Yeah. The first project I've done that.
That's fine. You can take your time. Right. So Nagendra is already working as a functional test engineer, right? Or a manual test engineer. So yeah, go ahead, Nagendra. Yes, create a basic HTTP request, select HTTP request.
Yeah.
Now enter the request URL. Yes.
Yes.
You remember or no how to do that? Right. Take your time.
Here we have to enter the request.
Yes. So let me go to the browser. You have it in the slides, right? Copy from there. You can copy it from there. Go closer. Let's see here. Once you copy the API, the query parameters are automatically populated, right? So and just click on send. Yeah, go ahead, man. Okay. So you send the request and observe here. You see the status as 200. Okay, that means your request is processed successfully, and you see the response time is 225. 1 second. Hold on. You can see here. Hold on. Nagendra, please wait. Hurry.
Yes.
You are controlling the screen. Yeah, you see here,
No,
this is the response time of the API. So you got the response in 225 milliseconds, and this is the response size, and this is the response that you got from the server, and this is in JSON format, right? You see curly braces and square brackets means that is JSON format. Here you can see you got the response in JSON format. If you want to see in some other format, you can see it here like this. This is XML format, right? And you got it right. By default, JSON will be selected here, and you can see the response here. So longitude, latitude. So coordinates, CORD, this stands for coordinates, and longitude, latitude. Let me pull this up. Right? And you see, this is the description, weather description, overcast clouds, this is the temperature, the main temperature, and minimum temperature this much, max temperature this much. So if you want to test with single user, you can use any tool like this, like Postman tool, right? But if you want to do performance testing with them, if you want to see the performance of that API with some, when how to see how the performance is when some 1,000 users are, some 5,000, 10,000 users are, using, right? You can use some tool like this, like JMeter or Loader, any other performance testing tool, right? It's as simple as that, guys. We don't have any recording, we don't have any correlations, parameterizations. But the thing is, like, we need to build the request, we need to, using the endpoint URL, we have to develop our script, and we have to add assertions also. Say, for example, the last step here is, in the API testing, right? So add an assertion to check the result, just to make sure that, because when you have hundreds of APIs or thousands of APIs, it's difficult to go to each request and see whether the request response is correct or not, whether you got a correct response or not, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So you can add something over here, like, temperature minimum or temperature maximum as an assertion. So, if you got a response from that, definitely it should be having that minimum temperature, max temperature, humidity and all. Say, for example, humidity value should be there in the response. So, add assertion, right? Response assertion, let me use add from clipboard, right? Right. So I gave, like 1,000 users.
1,000.
Okay. 10 users or 100 users. Right. So this API testing you can do in GUI mode because, it doesn't take much CPU and memory. Right. Because, request is simple and response is also simple. Right. You will not get, HTML pages, images and all. Right. You just see the JSON response. So it is a response is lightweight, right? So that's why you can use, JMeter in GUI mode itself, right? When you are doing a test for API testing, you can go ahead with, unless until it is in thousands or lakhs, right? So you can run the JMeter tool or, any other tool in GUI mode itself for API testing. Okay.
Sure. One question. So we use get request, right? So with this API, we can use post, update, delete also.
Yes, you can do.
Okay.
Suppose, you have an API for, changing the password. Say, for example, you have an API for changing the password. If you know the endpoint URL, right, you can, that will be a post request eventually, right? Because, you are sending the password, some confidential data, obviously, you have to use a post request or, actually for updating password, the request is patch request. The correct, request is patch request for updating some password, like kind of, right? So, based on your requirement, you will use, what type of request it is, like based on what type of request it is, like you will select the appropriate request method. Actually, for updating the password, you use patch method. Okay. So yeah, you can use any request, HTTP request method. So I think I mentioned that in the slide also. So API details, like, request type. See here, I mentioned it here: get, post, put, or delete. Let me add patch also. Okay, you can use any of these request types, not just this, but there are many other request types. Okay. Is it simple? API testing simple?
Yes.
Yes.
But how we will get the URL of that API? I mean, for practicing, how we will get?
Yeah, that's what, like I gave here, right? DevOps to provide API documentation, right? DevOps will be having idea of that, or developers, you can contact developers or developers. Nowadays, like we have DevOps team, like they will be having all those details, right? So, they will be in the Scrum meetings. DevOps team also will be in the Scrum meetings, right? So, you can ask them, you can know, like, you will know, like, which resource is working on this API. And you can ask them, like, what can you give me the endpoint URL for this, for so and so, API, right? Whether it is change password API or whether it is, login API, right? So you can ask the endpoint URL, get the endpoint URL from them. Or else functional testing team also will be having that idea, because they will do functional testing. They will do functional testing units. They will use this tools like Postman and do testing with single user. So they also will be having all those details, endpoint URL and authentication methods and all.
Okay. For our practice, to know various APIs, how we will get for our practice?
Yeah, I will give a list actually. Yesterday I didn't get time to look into that. For your practice purpose, I have actually some good examples, but I searched for that, that URL, but
This is so easy actually. APIs are so easy.
I missed it somehow.
You should go to JMeter. See,
Yes, go to JMeter.
here we are getting for suppose say for 100 users we are checking the response rate performance. So instantly we are getting a response for all the users, right? Like how to calculate the time.
You can add one more listener, right? Aggregate report or summary report where you will get the response.
But see, for one user it is taking suppose 1 second. For 100 users it may be 100 seconds directly, right?
Why do you want it for a specific user? We want average response time, right? So we don't want for each specific user, right? That is not important when you are doing performance testing, right?
Yeah.
See,
so for
what we
100
will see
users,
when you
so
are
much
doing
time.
performance testing, do you capture like what is the response time for each and every user? No, right? So we will look for average response time only, right? For that matter, we will average response time is also not correct. So actually we have to look for 90th percentile. 90th percentile or 95th percentile, right? So for that you can add some aggregate report where you will get that 90th percentile or 95th percentile, and like you can run a test with some 100 users and see like how are the average min max response times and 90th percentile time and that. Okay, see the average response time is around 250 milliseconds. Okay. 90th percentile 258, right?
So for practice, I guess we can use the web tools application, right? It has
no, that web tools application, those are not APIs, right? Those are not APIs. Okay, I'll give some examples. I'll give some example APIs. Hold on, let me pause recording and let me find it out. So I have some 2 examples. Under REST API, I gave some dummy sample REST API. There's a lot of APIs over here. Dummy REST API example.com, right? So so here you can see full root. This is the API endpoint URL. Okay, API v1 employees. So what does this give? It will get all the employee data, right? And this will this will get a single employee data, and this creates a new record in the database. This is how the API looks like, right? API v1 create. V1 is some version number, and this is the employees, means it will get all the employees details. Employee 1 and it will get a single employee detail. So this is how your API endpoint URLs look like. So like let us use this. Let's use this. Let me click on this. Okay, let me click on this. So you got all the employee details, right? See here, employee ID, employee name, employee salary, and so on. You got all the employee details. Suppose now you want to test this API. What you will do? So this is your server name. Let's say for example you want to test this API, right? So copy this, and if you want to test with Postman tool, then simply what you can do is click on new, right? HTTP request, and put paste the URL here and send it, right? Right? You got the response. So you can see, you can so the status code is 200, okay, and this is the time that it took, 1325 milliseconds, almost 1.3 seconds, and this is the response size, right? So and if you want to see, this is if you want to do functional testing, if you want to test whether the API is functioning working fine or not, right? So you can use Postman tool. So if you want to do JMeter, do performance testing, so how you do? Go to a test plan, add a thread group. So let me add to the same thread group. So we can add a request sampler, HTTP request sampler, and suppose like give some meaningful name to this, employees API, right? And copy the endpoint URL here as a comment. Now give protocol is HTTP, and then this is your server name, right? Server name or IP address, and then this is your path, right? So copy from this, like this, copy and copy it under path, and this is a simple get request, right? So employees API. So now let me I will disable this for time being. I will run only this one. Add a response assertion. You can add a response assertion, and you can add listeners, and just run this API and see, right? Let's see. Let me. So before deleting this, see it we ran with 100 users, and this is the average response time, 325 milliseconds, right? So that is about the weather API. Now let's see for this employees API. Let me clear. See, you remember this timings guys, average response time is 325 milliseconds, right? Let me clear this. Employees API may take some time because it has to return a lot of data, isn't it? See, it has to this employee API. What is it doing? It is returning details of around 25 employees or 23 employees, right? And isn't it? So now let's run this from JMeter. Let's reply this from JMeter and see the results. Why it is okay. So we'll see why it is failing, but see response time is okay. This is also good. It's around like 1 second only, right? But there are some issues. Okay. Let's see what is the okay, too many requests. Got it. So it is failing because there are too many requests from the to the server. So let me stop it. Let's add something time. Okay. So I'll add something time to the thread group. Okay. Yes. So you can use. So when you are testing only one API, right? So okay, let me try this add thing time to children. You can add this, so it will get added after that. Or you can use custom timer also. I'll give some time over here. I'll give some 1 second time delay between each request. Okay. I think will it be applied for this? Okay. Now let me do one thing. I'll use okay. Let's see. Let's replay and see if it works like this. You got it right. Why that error came? 429 error came. That is because there are too many requests. Server is not accepting those many number of requests. So definitely it put some think time is mandatory, right? Now so let me run it with this 1 second think time and see. It's failing because I think think time is not working.
Sure, for this APIs, there is something like response time should not exceed 5 seconds or 10 seconds, something like that.
Yes, it will also have SLS. So, add a timer. Generally for API testing, we can use this constant timer. Or else, let me see if I can add timer to this. Okay, yeah. So for API testing, you can use this constant timer. So just right click and add timer and select this constant timer. So and give some timer value and think time value. So by default it is 300 milliseconds, right? So let me give some let's run with that. Let's see what happens. It should, or let me change it to some 1000. So and that is 1 second. I'm giving a think time of 1 second. Still it is failing. Okay, with the same too many requests. Let me increase the think time. Let me increase this think time to 2 seconds. Oh, constant timer is not working. Delay to this is 2 seconds, right? Is it not working? What is the time value I gave here? Okay. Let me do one thing. Constant delay offset, random delay maximum. At least some requests are working now, right? Let me increase this think time value. Random delay maximum, constant delay offset. Let me change it to 1000. Constant delay offset something 200. Something like that. Random delay maximum. Okay, so basically the server is not accepting too many requests, that's why it is failing. But this, like we have to increase the think time. Why this constant timer is not working? Let me make this some 3 seconds. Let me disable this. Let me enable this one. Constant timer, we use constant timer mostly for API testing. Okay, so constant timer. Oh yeah, okay, it's my bad, my mistake. So put it at this level, like this. No, this is not correct. Yes. Okay, that's why it's failing. So now let us give some. 1 second is also enough. Let me stop this. So, I disable this. I'm removing this flow control action. Okay, so we have to give like this. After employees API constant timer. Now this timer will be applied. Right. So now let me clear this off.
So ramp up period, you should have given ramp up period. Create.
No, that's fine, but I gave some ramp up period, right? For every 1 second, one user will be added. Let me increase this constant time up to some 2 seconds. Let's see. It's not, timer is not working properly, right? 13, 14, 15. Every 1 second a request is going on. Okay, let me do one thing, let me make this 10 users. Maybe, it's not accepting too many requests, so that's why it's failing. So let me wait. Let me run with 10 users only. Let's see. Okay, now you can see some requests are passing. Let me increase this. Still it is failing, too many requests. Let's see if something
I
is
guess
provided.
constant timer is not working. It's not waiting for 3 seconds for next state, right?
Yeah, correct. So constant timer we give 3 seconds, right? But the test is completed in 13 seconds. 10 requests, these are sent in 13 seconds. Okay. Let me check if the timer is working. So I give the loop contest and file. Right now, for every API request, it has to wait for 3 seconds between each request. Now you can see the constant timer is working. It is waiting for 3 seconds between each request, right? So you have 4 into 3. Yeah, this is more than that.
So maybe someone else also hitting the same API. Is it because of that also, right? Like we are using this API for testing. Maybe someone is also using the APIs, these APIs features.
Yeah, basically, like there's too many requests. So server is not accepting those many requests. Okay, let's wait for a minute and let's run it again. Let me clear this.
Because these are open APIs, so
But now you can see the constant timer, is being applied. That 3 seconds delay is being applied. Right. Second request done at 9 seconds. Now 12 after 12 seconds. Yeah. Now the timer is working correctly, but still the same failing with too many requests. That's fine. So but this is how you do performance testing for API testing when you are doing API testing. So this is how you build a script, and this is how you run the test, right? Let us take one more example. We'll take this weather map only. Let's take this weather map only. I'll do one thing. Let me enable this because okay, let me disable this, and let me run this script with 10 users. Okay. This weather map API I'll run with 10 users, and I'll give some type of test 10 and loop count as 10. See, there are no issues. That is a server issue, guys. Right? So that is not accepting too many requests. The server is not accepting too many requests. Now you can see, this is working fine. This weather API is working fine with 10 users. Let me increase a bit. I'll make this 50. Right? It also 50, and let me clear this off. Let me clear the previous one. This is working seamlessly, right? This is working perfectly fine. Scroll automatically. So let's scroll. We don't have even a single failed request. 50 into 10. So we should get 500 samples. So there is not even a single error, right? Yeah, there is not even a single error. See. We don't have any single error also. Fine. So this is how we do API testing this. Right? Simple, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys. So I'll stop it here. Any queries? It's already 12. Any queries, guys, before we close the session for today?
Me,
And like,
Srinivas.
so many applications have, they have exposed their APIs, guys. Okay. So let's say, for example, let's see if there are some common websites that expose these their APIs. I have seen like, AOS also exposes some APIs actually. Let me go to management console. Oh, we have already seen this, right? AOS front end, AOS backend. Let's go to AOS backend. Yes. So see here, these are the APIs. REST APIs, SOAP APIs. These are there in this. You can use this. I think we can also use this. We have the endpoint URLs anywhere. GitHub.com AOS account service.
API docs link is given, Kishore. The first name.
Okay. Yeah. So catalog order master. Let's see one by one. Yeah, you have some APIs here, right? API V1 demo app config export for list of factors opens. Let's go back to the previous example. So where we saw those, that employees API. Where is it? Yes. Let me open it. Firefox. Yes. Yeah. So you can use this guys. Okay. So try to use this. So this URL, this endpoint URL gives you one employee data. Right. Oh, many requests. Okay. I think I will get the same thing. Error search is not found. API is not working at all. Update an employee record. Don't think we can do that. Only this one is working. No, even this is working. The 2 minute question. You can try from your machine. So you didn't try from your machine, right? Try this from your side. So this is one. Right? So one more example that I have is online REST API for testing and prototyping. Let me check what are these. Okay, so here you see right, GoRest.public v1 users, nested resources. Let me try a few of these. Create and get user details. Let me use this one. Okay, so this is one API, public API. GoRest.co.in public v1 posts. I will share you. Let me share you this one, the first one, right? This one. Let me share this one. In the Zoom chat, let me share it. All right. So I'll share you some more, examples. I'll share you some more examples once I find out. I should be having some, some Word document or something. Or I remember that I saved in Notepad++. I'll search it. I'll find it out and I will share it. I'll stop it here, guys. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
We'll meet tomorrow. Yeah.
Can you share the